once stated in another context that the truth needed to be attended to by a bodyguard of lies. Hmm?
Microphone down.
Oh, microphone? Yeah. Okay, 1 second.
Let me start over again.
Thank you.
Winston Churchill once stated that in another context that the truth needed to be accompanied by a bodyguard of lies. I think we've learned this morning from Grover that it's the capitalist interest to make sure that the truth is accompanied by a bodyguard of thugs, of well-mannered anti-communist thugs in all, in all different quarters. But I'm going to talk about something that flows out of Grover's presentation about Trotsky, what I would call the beginning of the following period after what he talks about, namely the so-called Second World War. Up until August 23rd, 1939, the capitalists' strategy for maintaining their rule was to, one, destroy the United Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and to, secondly, to weaken and destroy communist and socialist forces wherever possible around the world.
Ow. Why don't you just
Move this away.
yeah, it's actually, it's getting feedback, it's a little bit loud.
There we go.
They wanted to do this by using Hitler as a battering ram against the Soviet Union, and at the same time feigning neutrality to Hitler-Mussolini aggression elsewhere, such as the Sudetenland, Ethiopia, Spain, Austria, Czechoslovakia. And then Czechoslovakia, the deal made between the Nazis and the French and British around Czechoslovakia's independence or lack thereof in the fall of 1938, in the fall of Spain to Franco in March of 1939, were basically a double wake-up call, serious wake-up call for the Soviet Union. And basically where the Soviet Union, at that particular point, the task of the communist movement, including the Soviet Union, was to defend the USSR at all costs and to build a united front against fascism and war the world over. And this involved a two-track diplomacy. The Soviets, on the part of the Soviets in particular, the Soviets sought an alliances with the West to enforce the Versailles Treaty of 1919 around German rearmament. To basically, they proposed that the bourgeois societies, the capitalist societies, simply do what they had committed themselves to do on paper. Of course, with no forthcoming response, because by that time the capitalists had made up their minds that they were going to allow Hitler to do his dirty deeds and stuff and go after the Soviets. And then the other track that the communists and the Soviets pursued was to align with whoever to build a united front against fascism and war. Around Spain, around China, against Japan, and other examples. Well, it comes to this. March of 1939, it comes to this. The USSR is faced with a choice: fight Hitler sooner or later, and the Soviet preference is later. When all approaches to the west fail, the Soviets begin to apply, pursue back to a diplomacy directly to Germany. Germany, who wants the Silesian region of Poland for its oil fields, but will wind up having to fight France, Britain, and others who are tied into Poland by diplomatic military arrangements. On August 23rd, Molotov of the Soviet Union and Ribbentrop of Germany sign a non-aggression pact between the USSR and Germany. 8 days later, September 1st, Germany invades Poland, and we have the beginnings of what we call World War II. What's going to happen as a result of this pact? The USSR will acquire by force major portions of eastern Poland that had actually been a part of Russia before and had been wrested from Soviet government in the 1920s as a result of warfare with Poland and Britain, the so-called Curzon Line, after the British Prime Minister of that time. So basically USSR was involved in while the Germans were involved with a land grab, the Soviets were involved with a take-back. Germany will take the remainder of Poland, and as a result, Britain and France declare war on Germany and suffer bitter losses over the next 2 years. This is a diplomatic blowback on capitalism's anti-Soviet policy. It blows up in their face. It becomes known as a Sitzkrieg because these countries are forced to sit it out, so to speak. And we'll basically sit it out until, they're still hinging their hopes that the Germans will stop fighting them and maybe turn around and head east, which they finally do in June of 1941. And up until June of 41, what's going on here is an inter-imperialist war. After June of 1941, this is an anti-fascist war. It involves inter-imperialist dynamics, but these imperialists are now forced to align themselves with the Soviet Union in order to save themselves. I don't have enough time to talk about the real fun games that happened after. I'm using that term facetiously. After that pact was signed, like what happened with Finland from November 1939 until March 1940. What happened with Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania those countries were immediately, beginning in September and October of 1939, forced to accept treaties allowing the USSR to establish bases and station troops, finally ending in June 1940 with a military occupation of those three countries. And in August of 1940, all these countries are annexed as constituent republics of the USSR. I don't have time to talk about all that stuff. Finland in itself is a major topic that doesn't start with November of 1939. In fact, it goes all the way back to 1918 in these kinds of diplomatic and military relations and stuff that go on. So that's all I have to say about those matters. I want to say that these are the kinds of things that we wind up having to deal with because Trotsky and his crew and various other anti-communists of that decade are allowed to get away with what they get away with in terms of how they lie to the public.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to start. Need help?
I'm fine.
I need going to comment and questions period. Grover, would you like to sit down or would you like to
Well,
stand?
it's already set up for me
For
to sit down,
sitting,
right?
yeah. So let me
maybe
adjust.
Instead of going through all the rigmarole